Now, as you can see, we have our nice bouquet of speakers from the first session ready. I feel there's a certain distance between us, but that's for the cameras and so on. I would like to start by thanking you all for being very precise, very clear in your messages. I would say there's a lot of activism in this panel, which is great, and this is reflected also in questions coming in from the audience, and I'm going to get to them quite soon. But first, I would just like to prepare the expert panel on the first row, that they will be given the opportunity to ask questions to this panel in a short while. So in this first row, we have, I haven't counted you yet, but I think there's more than 10, less than 15, different academics representing a variety of disciplines. So they are ready to ask questions to the panels during the day. So you know what to do. You have to tilt your name tag or your sign when you want to ask a question. So I'm trying to find the right first question. I think I'm going to use one from the audience, from John Gould, and add a couple of aspects to it. So what he is asking, and this is for the entire panel, who are the global stakeholders resisting the energy transition? What strategies should we use to engage them? Regulatory, grassroots, political, or economic? And Gina, you were quite outspoken when it came to Equinor, which is a former petroleum company turned broad energy company, but as you showed us and told us, it still has a very, very large proportion of its investments going back into the fossil fuels. So how do you suggest, adding on to this question, I guess you would say that that is one of the global stakeholders actually resisting the transition. So how would you suggest that Equinor goes around and goes about, more correctly, in turning this unbalance into a better balance?
Thanks for the question. I think it's a brilliant question about people or stakeholders resisting the transition. And of course, we have to start with the oil and gas companies, especially in Norway, or the fossil fuel companies. And as I said, and as you said, Equinor is well, it's not a broad energy company. It's an oil company. And what do they have to do? I think it's obvious that they have to stop searching for new oil. That's kind of the first step that they have to take, because we know that we've already found much more coal, oil and gas than we can burn. And we know, as we also heard from the rest of the panel, that our part of the world, we burned our share, our part of it. So Equinor Norway should be leading that transition, should just understand that we can do something else than drilling in the ground and burning stuff that is burning the planet. So Equinor should be, instead of decreasing their investments in renewable energy, as they are doing as we speak, they should stop looking for new oil. They should start really investing in the green projects, although they are not as profitable as the fossil ones. And we are in a unique position because Equinor is our oil company. It belongs to the Norwegian state. And still, we are not in control of that transition that they should be doing and is not doing. So, especially to all the students, for example, studying engineering, students that we know Equinor really wants in their company. I know they are super present at NTNU and other universities. Just speak up, tell them that you will not work in their company if they keep investing, if they keep being less than 1% renewable. I think that could make a huge change, and I think the Norwegian people, now it's a lot of the Norwegian context, but the Norwegian people should take responsibility of that company.
You're right, there's a lot of Norwegian context right now, but yeah. We can handle that for a short time at this panel. So I would just like to add a question regarding Equinor as well from the skeptic. If Equinor stops producing oil and gas, how will that affect Europe's ability to defend itself, and how will it affect European inflation? Because now, I mean, the European energy system is reliant on our gas instead of the Russian gas that was flowing freely until 3 years ago.
Still to me.
Well,
Yes?
yeah, first of all, but I know the rest of the panel would probably like to respond as well.
It's a good question. And I think many people think that an environmental movement in Norway are still talking about that we should stop selling oil and gas tomorrow. Nobody's talking about that. Really, nobody. We are saying, first of all, stop searching for new oil that will be on the market in 50 years. That is step one. 2 days ago, a new oil field started producing in the Barents Sea. It will be producing for 30 years. 30 years. That's 2055. It's crazy that we keep allowing that. So yes, for Europe's energy security, right now, Norway is delivering fossil fuel. And we will keep doing that for some years. But we really should start thinking more than 2, 3, 5 years ahead. And start thinking that Europe needs another energy, a country that can keep delivering clean energy in the future. And we have to start developing that clean energy to be that partner also in 2050, 2060.
Joyeeta, you said we have to leave the fossil fuels underground.
So, you know, I see this slightly differently because, as I said to you earlier, I think climate is the most important security issue. I think the global north has to take action. I think it's really important that not only Norway stops, and I would go further than you, I would think they should even stop with existing oil and gas. And I think Europe, if it can't manage otherwise, should take a little break. Maybe we all should go into a COVID-like situation because it is a climate emergency. Maybe we should all fly less right now. Maybe our conferences should all be online like during COVID. Maybe we need a bit of time to think about how we are going to work. Because if we continue, if you give the 10 years to the global north, say global Europe, to keep on using this oil and to and not put pressure on Europe, then the question is, what happens to Africa? What happens to Asia and Latin America? And then what happens to the rest of the world? So for that reason, I would go backwards. I would say, you know, we need to put pressure. If you put pressure in Norway, we have to mobilize our students in Germany, in Netherlands, in France. We have to put that pressure that we have to stop using fossil fuel. Right now, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of money is going into the military because of the risks that we expect to have, which is a great pity, but it is going in. And I really think the military, if it's going to spend all this money, it should do it in the right way and not cut corners. And I'm seeing right now people saying, oh, we have to increase the military very fast. Let's not do the green permitting. Let's not do the social permitting. No. Let's speed up the permitting process, but you get it right, because if you are going to invest, you should do it right. And I'm serious about this. I think I'm fed up in 38 years of listening, no, we have another 10 years to go. We don't. Time is up. It's up to us to get up and stand up and say, okay, you know, let's sit at home for a little while. Let's do it online. Let's go out a little bit less. Let's rethink what kind of a world we want to live in. Otherwise, there's no future for the kids in the room here.
And that applause implies that next year's conference is going to be digital. Well, I can't say that on behalf of the organizers, but yeah, you have a very valid point. And the rest of the panel, feel free to jump in. There's a question also from the audience to Meron and to Youba. What role is China currently playing in the resource sector of the African continent, particularly regarding the appropriation of minerals, and how do you foresee the developing in the future? Because that's at stake as well. Why are China so interested in African minerals?
Maybe
Meron.
I can start. So China over the last decade or two has become the #1 trade partner in Africa, and it actually is also taking the higher place comparing to US and Europe. And there are a lot of reasons for that, but I think the main one is obviously the resources that are available in the continent, and the partnership has been building sustainably and steadily for a long period of time with less interruption. And there are many ways that is happening. I mean, creating the opportunity and the financing mechanism and the coming in and being able to invest on those places with less regulatory rigorousness that we see from other places is one, but the other one is also, I think, there has been the China-Africa partnership has been in making for a long period of time. And it has been very steady, and it has been consistent, and there has been regular state relationships and organized mechanisms that has been happening. But the bad side for me at this point is that most of it is happening more of as an extraction rather than investing in the manufacturing and the capabilities in the country. So yes, there is a partnership, it's a number one, but it still follows more or less the extractive model, which might not be the most sustainable way of doing it.
Do you agree, Youba?
Yeah, but I think that not all China, is also the rest of the world. Because, as I said, that the hydrogen is not China. It's Europe producing hydrogen in Africa, where people do not have. The only alternative energy they have is to burn their livelihoods. This is not the future. Is they burn their livelihood to cook. And then they use that opportunity to produce hydrogen to import in Europe. This is not China. And then one has to look at also what alternative the continent has. Because all the talk, going back to fossil fuel issue, it looked like the world is only industrial country, is only the North. And then none of them talk about what future, what present the African country has in that context. If you have the electricity consumption per head in Africa is 180 kilowatt hour per year. Just compared to Europe, it's 8,000. What can you expect? What kind of life can you expect with 180 kilowatt hour per year?
But Youba, if I might come back on this, my suggestion is that the global north go down, not global south, and definitely not global Africa. But I also think that when we think in terms of what needs to happen in Africa, it's a theory, it's to try and see if we can make sure that Africa doesn't get locked in. And that is the fear that I have. But it is not to say that Africans should not get energy access.
But the current,
my story is about the global north.
But the current situation is that you lock in Africa to make a choice between China or between Europe and between others. That's the problem.
No, that is not good.
But this is the question that has been raised. Why China? And why none of them address the issue of Europe? It's the same thing. Because the continent needs infrastructure. And then after a century of colonization, what infrastructure Europeans have built in the continent in comparing to the China, what they have done in the past 20 years? This is reality, this is a fact. This is not a dream, this is not a theory, this is reality. And then we have to consider those different issues. And we are all in the same boat. And then we need to lay down all the problem, and then we need to take responsibility and the solution together.
And keeping that in mind, I would like to hear from you, Jae, because you live in a country that once again has withdrawn from the Paris Agreement. And not only that, President Trump has declared, rightly so, an energy crisis, but this is resulting in hasty approvals of oil and gas projects without environmental regulations. And as an American, how do you see the US role in the global energy transition today?
Yeah, a very good question. Technically, the US is still in because you can't withdraw instantly. It's a 3-year process. A couple of things to note is that a lot of the progress that has been made has been driven by changes that are economic. That is, if you look at the power sector in the US, the power sector has gone through a period in which no utility executive has been willing to build a new coal plant for 30 years. All the new capacity has been either natural gas, which is half the carbon to energy ratio of the coal, or renewable energy, wind and solar. That's all the new capacity that has come online. And we have been retiring coal plants at a very rapid rate. A lot of that has been driven by the technology advances and not by regulatory frames. So those processes are, those drivers are still there. And the batteries that have improved have taken electric vehicles from being a curiosity to mainstream passenger transportation. And so a lot of what's gone on has really been driven by, dare I say it, the engineers that have been providing us with ways that are too hard to resist. So that's going to continue on. States also have policies that will continue on. And so while at the federal government level, there are very new policies, I think that there are other inertial elements in the system that, let me put my hopeful hat on, can continue to move emissions to lower levels.
You mentioned in your speech, Jae, that we need increased ambitions when it comes to policies. But isn't there a risk that the higher the ambitions are, the larger the gap between actual policy and the ambitions? That I know that a discussion in Norway has been that no, we can't set the ambitions too high because it's too difficult to reach them. What do you think in the panel? I mean, when it comes to the policies, should we continue to aim for the stars and hopefully reach the moon, which we've already done, by the way? But yeah, Gina.
Well, I think it's not aiming for the stars, it's really just listening to science. And I think ambitions should follow science. It's as easy as that. You can't be leading a country, be one of the really powerful people in the world and say that we will put our ambitions below what science says necessary for a livable planet. So that's the start. And then you have to make policy, then you have to close the gap. And that is really hard. And we do need technology, a lot of it, which is helping us, but it's far from enough. And I'm not a techno-optimist, quite the contrary, because I think it will help us in the start, and then we are reaching the point where it doesn't help us much, because we are just trying to, in the global north, keep living our lives as we do, keep growing, and just changing that energy source. But there is, as I said also, and we know the biology, the nature crisis, there are some limits to the world, and we are using so much more of the resources than we can, than is sustainable. So we do have to change our ways of living. We do have to maybe go into pandemic mode to rethink, to accept in our country, our part of the world, that it does amplify changes in our everyday life as well. And the politicians should be leading that transition, and they should be communicating the crisis that we stand in, because people are willing to change their life if they are aware and feel the crisis. We did that during the pandemic. We stayed home. We changed our lives. I was Russ in 2020 for Norwegian people. It's a celebration when you finish high school. People go out crazy. No, we stayed home and did nothing. We can do that, but we need the politicians to communicate the crisis and to match that with actual politics.
And as you said, science should be at the basis of all politics. And now we have this excellent expert panel. Some of them already are ready to ask questions. Several. So we'll see what we have time. I think we have 7 minutes approximately left for our experts. So I'm actually gonna, because I noticed, Anna, you were the first one to flip your card. So Anna Wieczorek, who is a professor and chair of Sustainable Innovation and Transitions at the Eindhoven University of Technology, and also affiliated with the NTNU. Give it a go. What is your comment or question to the panel?
Yes, so I don't know if I have to press something.
I don't know. You don't have to press anything,
Okay.
but I think it's...
Well, thank you very much for this inspiring set of talks. And I also want to say that I'm also fed up. I'm 30 years in the field. I'm also fed up. I think we have to take action right now. And I'm also trying to do it from my position as a scientist, as a researcher at my university. But this type of science, you talk about, yeah, let's rely on science, let's listen to scientists. The science I'm trying to do, transdisciplinary, more action-oriented, is not rewarded. It's very often seen as not very legitimate type of science. So my question to the panel is, how do we organize our research at universities, especially at technical universities, where there is a lot of fundamental research? What does it mean for scientists, for science and scientists, especially that we don't have the time? There is urgency to take action now.
Joyeeta.
I personally feel that if you're already a professor, you don't have to worry about the impact factor. You just go out and speak every day.
That's what I'm doing.
Yeah, that's what we are all doing now. I think even all of us have been doing that. I really feel that I'm, sitting in the office and trying to get an impact factor higher doesn't make any sense. But I also think it's really important to mobilize the students, to make them sit in a classroom and say, write a letter to the members of parliament, go to every neighborhood and explain to people how to get the renewable panels on their roof, how to get off fossil fuel, how maybe it's a big problem for all of us, and how to try to link all the different environmental issues, water, nature, climate. I really think we have to get activists because, and I don't mean activists in the sense of being a non-scientist. I mean as a scientist, being out there, explaining to people why it's important. If we don't do that, and I don't think we should worry about the rewards. The reward is, I think, a stable climate. Because already we are at 1.2. We are not going to get a just climate. We may get some kind of a messy climate, but hopefully it doesn't go way beyond 2. So I think that is the reward that we have to work for.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to add anything to that? Otherwise, I can move on to one of the other experts.
I was just going to say, I think that has been said very well, but I was going to say there is the translation that needs to happen, and I heard you say transdisciplinary, but I think multidisciplinary, as in terms of bringing other social science or other actors to translate what the science says to those that are not necessarily on the same side has been critical. I'm thinking of, for example, in Africa, what we see is talking to policymakers requires a lot more deeper engagement, and translating that science in a way that makes sense to the policy and the politician is, I think, going to be key.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna. Anders Hammer-Strømman, you were the second one who quickly tilted your badge. You're a professor of industrial ecology. Sustainability is at the core of your work, and you are affiliated with NTNU. Go ahead.
Well, thanks. So we had the global stocktake at the COP in 28, where the world agreed upon a text which included transition away from fossil fuels. Now, this February, we had a deadline for the updated nationally determined contributions, which is the practical way of sort of making the pledges, right? And very few countries submitted pledges by the deadline. I just want to hear, is it slipping? In a sense, only about 20% of global emissions have been covered so far by the pledges submitted. Is the envisioned transition slipping away, or do we have an opportunity now to work to our governments and ensure they submit proper pledges? Yeah.
Who would give it a go? Youba.
Okay. I think that we need to go and then to revisit the rituals of a report, of defining your report, your contribution. And then there is the link between what in the national determined contribution on the national development agenda. It has to be completely aligned with as an integral part of it. Whether we like it or not, countries will implement their national development agenda. And then why you disconnect the NDCs with the national development agenda. This is not only a problem of the South, it's also the problem of the North. And then we need to revisit, and then some of those rituals. It's like the IPCC report, we're saying the same thing for almost more than 3 decades to say that it's hard, but we said that, but we can make it. It's hard, but we can make it all the time. And then knowing that we cannot make it. And I think that we need to revisit some of those different issues if we really want to get into action.
Joyeeta.
You know, what I think right now has happened, and that's also a failure of one of the articles of the Climate Convention. That article was about building awareness, education, making sure that people understand. My hypothesis is that people above the age of 25 may never have studied climate change in school or college. And they've just heard about it now and then in the newspaper, and then they've just passed it by. It's not internalized. And I think part of the reason why governments can't go much further is because their population is not educated about it enough to be willing to give them the support they need. And I think it's better late than never. I mean, going back to the COVID hypothesis, we had presidents and prime ministers standing with a scientist next to them, telling the public, this is a crisis. We have to change, and trying to get a debate. That debate I have not seen. I've seen all kinds of bureaucratized meetings of technocrats sitting around tables, and then they're just discussing what is possible given that we don't want to change our lifestyle. I haven't seen, if we have to get to net zero, what can we do and what must we do? That's the narrative, not how long can we become, how long can we stay at this level of GDP, or how high can we become? And that's the problem. So I think we have to really, I really feel that we have to mobilize all of society. Grandmothers, mothers, children.
1 second, Gina. I noticed that Christian Klöckner just flipped his card, and this, what you're talking about, Joyeeta, is also a matter of psychology in many ways. And Christian,
yes.
Psychology is your field. You're from NTNU, so I'm letting you get the word, and this is actually the final word, or the final question. For
okay, now it's a lot of burden on me. But anyway, I'm starting to react a bit against idolizing the pandemic, because it's not comparable in many ways to the way we need to deal with climate change and other environmental issues. One important thing is, like these issues, they don't go away. The pandemic is a temporary thing, in a way. Not that future pandemics will not come.
Which comes back, yeah.
Yes, yeah. They can come back. But even then, was it really a success that we had with how the pandemic was handled? It was also highly unjust in many ways. It caused a lot of harm, the way it was dealt, and not the least, it polarized societies in a way that made it possible that we now are in situations where populists actually can capitalize on that. And I'm convinced that the way the pandemic hit and the way it was dealt with actually contributed to that, and now makes dealing with other things much more difficult. So I react to like idolizing that, well, here we could do this and we can do the same. I think we made a lot of mistakes in handling the pandemic also.
But maybe just to respond, maybe we can learn from those mistakes, but we need to educate. My point is, we need to educate the public. I just gave that as an example, but if you have good ways not to create polarization in society, because that's important. And I'm not really focusing on Africa, because I don't think this is that critical for Africa, but it's critical for us in Europe to get off fossil fuel.
But let me go to the pandemics. This revealing is exactly the same thing that happened in the climate in the gap, North and South gap. During the pandemic, I was in Geneva. Hardly I can get out. And I was locked in. And I moved from Geneva to Bamako, and it's a completely different world. People are in the mosque, people are in the church, people are in the market, and then no mask, nothing. It's like a completely different planet. And the responses that provided was for the north, not from the south. And then so that it looked like we are completely different planet, and this is exactly the same thing that happened in the climate.
I'm sorry, I have to. Yeah, Gina, you're going to get the final word with just 2 sentences because we are running out of time. And I know that this discussion is not finished. It has many different varieties, so keep on discussing. And Gina, since you're the voice of the future and the young generation, you will have the final word.
A lot to comment upon, but I will just, since I have 2 sentences, one thing that I do think the pandemic should learn us and the older generations is the solidarity between generations. During the pandemic, in Norway, for example, young people locked themselves in and set their lives on pause, although we were not in the risk of getting the diseases or the rest of the consequences. Our grandparents and parents and older, like in general, older people were. But so we did that solidarity act, kind of, within the society. And I think we lack that in the climate crisis. We lack that older generations put their lives on hold and change their lives and habits in solidarity with future generations. So a lot was handled in the wrong way. Some things, I think, in the good way. But that thing I think we should learn, and you should learn, and really take responsibility and make up for that.
Solidarity for the climate. Thank you so much to the panel, Jae Edmonds, Youba Sokona, Joyeeta Gupta, Meron Tesfaye Mikhail, and Gina Gylver. Thank you so much. It is time to move on, literally, and we are going to dig deeper into the shifting of political momentum.